The city of Norfolk, Virginia was initially incorporated in 1704, although settlement at the site of the city dates back around a half a century beforehand. During the Revolution, the city of Norfolk was bombarded so bad by the British that this building right here, St. Paul's Episcopal Church, was the only building left fully intact. This right here is one of the cannonballs that was fired during that bombardment. It landed in the side of St. Paul's Episcopal Church and is still there today, if you want to see it for yourself. So, I guess you can guess, I am here in Norfolk, Virginia. I am, let's just say, camping somewhere nearby. And I will be covering the history of the Hampton Roads area. Well, the southern part of it, more say, for the next few days. But stay tuned. I'm at the end of my first day here in Virginia Beach. I'd say I did quite went to Norfolk. Tomorrow I'm actually going to Virginia Beach itself, and I'm going to give you a little bit of the history of this park itself. Well, this morning we are here in First Landing State Park to talk about, well, the first landing of the Jamestown colonists. At approximately 4 a.m. on April 26 of 1607, 3 ships approached the cape I am currently on, Cape Henry. A landing party was sent ashore to explore this land of, quote, fresh water, fair meadows, and goodly tall trees. However, what that landing party would encounter was actually the first encounter with Native Americans of the region, the Powhatan. This encounter would lead to 2 members of the party being wounded, a prelude of things to come. The cape that they landed on will be named Cape Henry after the Prince of Wales and son of King James I. The party explored around the James River for a good place to make landfall and establish settlement, finding Jamestown on May 13th. Now here's the crazy thing about this forest. Because we are at the confluence of the Gulf Stream and the Laurentian Current, it is a meeting between warm and cold waters, which causes plants from further south than are supposed to be in this forest. Well, there's the Atlantic Ocean. I drove across an entire state to get here. The first hotel in what is now Virginia Beach was opened in the early 1880s, with the Norfolk and Southern Railroad operating it. However, that closed in 1887. Other resorts cropped up in the area, being spurred on by the railroad. However, it did not experience a major burst until cars started coming in 1922, with Virginia Beach Boulevard being built. Virginia Beach was incorporated in 1906 and experienced a lot of popularity as a seaside resort town. This caused it to become a high population area in the state, which resulted in Virginia Beach becoming an independent city, which is a city that has its own status as a county, in 1952. This right here is one of the oldest standing structures in Virginia. The Thorogood House was built in the early 1700s for a man named Argall Thorogood. The land was obtained by Argall's great-grandfather, Adam Thorogood, who occupied the land with a wooden structure. Argall built this brick structure, and it signifies the transition from wooden, non-permanent structures to permanent brick structures. Today, the Thorogood House is preserved on the National Register of Historic Landmarks and you can visit it yourself in Virginia Beach. I'm sitting here now, back at my campsite, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the history of First Landing State Park. You see, a long time ago it was called Seashore State Park, and during the age of the CCC in the 1930s, an all-black regiment of the CCC was appointed to take care of Seashore Park. So what they did is they drained swamps, they cut trails, they built the infrastructure that you see here, and made it into the park that it is today. Now, the CCC was disbanded when the United States was involved in World War II. Following the War of 1812 and the burning of Washington, the United States realized that there was a need to protect the Hampton roads and the Chesapeake Bay. Therefore, a fort was built in Hampton, a town that is the consolidation of 3 other towns, and this fort was called Fort Monroe. Fort Monroe is built on top of the foundation of other forts that were built before it, including one from the 1700s known as Fort George. The fort played a major role in the Civil War, and following the Civil War, when Jefferson Davis was captured, dressed as a woman by the way, he was interred here in a cell not too far from where I am walking right now. Fort Monroe continued to act as a military post until September of 2011, when it was decommissioned. In November, Fort Monroe was designated as a national monument, which you can visit today in Hampton, Virginia. Fort Monroe is the place where the first African Americans arrived in the United States as slaves. However, ironically, it also became a safe haven for escaped slaves in 1861, following the decision of a man named Benjamin Butler and creating something known as contraband. In 1861, what had happened was some of the slaves that the Confederacy was forcing to do stuff for them managed to escape to Fort Monroe, which was still in the hands of the Union. Butler decided that since these slaves were, considered property by the United States, and the United States was at war with the Confederacy, they would be considered contraband and were freed. I'm gonna miss the ocean. Probably gonna be a while before I come back this way. This right here is the ghost town of Union Level, Virginia, where the post office was initially built in 1836. The town was initially a tobacco planting town. However, when slavery ended and the Civil War ended in the 1860s, the tobacco industry experienced a mass decline, causing many of the planters to move to South Hill nearby. There was a resurgence in this town in the 1920s with the coming of the railroad. However, the Great Depression put the final nail into the town's coffin, with the last businesses closing in the 1980s. This right here is the remains of the old bank, which closed with the Depression. I figured there's no better place to end this video on Virginia history than with a vestige of Virginia's history behind me. So thank you for watching, have a happy Easter, and bye.